Yeah, I mean, look, AMD beat on the top and bottom line. They beat on data center revenue. They beat on client revenue. They beat on gaming revenue. So they beat across the board. They even beat on fourth quarter guidance. But the big deal here is it just wasn't enough. I think that Wall Street had lofty expectations already. The stock price has already soared far higher than a lot of people, I think, expected. And then when they came in with the results this quarter, it just didn't make people as excited as they wanted to be. It's kind of that, beat and raise. Okay, well, beat and raise even better than you did last time. And so that's probably what's going on here. It seems as though the company's going to continue to do well when it comes to the AI race. Don't forget the deals that they announced with OpenAI and Oracle, those don't hit the books until later. That's with their next generation GPUs. And so then we'll start to see from that. But perhaps people were expecting that revenue to hit now. I don't see why they would, because the deals were only just announced last month. And so it wouldn't necessarily be on this quarter guidance or the prior quarter guidance. So, when you look at a stock like this, you think of kind of what's happened to Nvidia in the past, not obviously saying that AMD and Nvidia are comparable as far as market cap or, total market share. But it's the idea that, okay, well, you've scored these huge deals, you've performed well, perform better for me, and then we'll talk.
Right, really high expectations there.
Let's take a look at those numbers. Q3 adjusted EPS 120. The street was at 117, so that's a beat. Q3 revenue, let's look at the top line, 9.25 billion. The estimate was 8.74 billion, so that's also a beat. I'm just looking for the operating margins. Here they are. Q3 adjusted operating margins, 24%. Consensus was at 24.8%. Now let's get to the forecast. Q4 revenue. AMD is guiding for between 9.3 and 9.9 billion. The street was at 9.21 billion. And in terms of their gross margin guidance, they say to look for about 54.5%. That's smack in line with consensus. At least initially here, the after hours, we don't see a ton of movement. Of course, remember, this stock had simply a remarkable move heading into this print. It was up about 50% just over the past month. That was, news of kind of the deals that AMD had been announcing with the likes of OpenAI and Oracle, and investors had clearly gotten very excited about what some of those deals meant for AMD looking ahead, both financially and strategically. Of course, we're also going to want a lot more color about the PC market, about the traditional server market, about how AMD is thinking about that China AI business looking ahead, if there will be a business. All of that will be in focus on the call. AMD reports the stock is slipping here about 2.5%, at least initially in the after hours. Of course, Cody, the stock had just a remarkable move heading into the print. But I'm curious, Cody, just to get your first take on these results.
I think, Josh, they're really strong numbers across the board. $500 million upside in revenue, decent EPS beat, $400 million guide. And it's really, it's largely on the strength of their gaming and client business. Gaming was up 181% annually. That's on the refresh of the Sony and Microsoft game systems. Clients up only 50% annually, but servers are up another 22%. So they're continuing to take share from Intel in the server market. But overall, I thought it was a strong number.
Cody, I mentioned the move the stock had into the print. It was up around, Cody, 50% over the past month. And you could chalk that up, I think, to AMD making these really headline-making deals, right, with big names, with OpenAI and with Oracle. And I'm just curious, Cody, when you were talking to your clients about those deals, how are you walking them through it? What it means for AMD long-term, financially and strategically?
Long term, I think it's extremely positive. You've got Oracle, you've got OpenAI that's now coming to the table there. The big concern had been whether or not AMD could become a real alternative to Nvidia's AI accelerators. And I think with these new agreements with Oracle and OpenAI, you're starting to see the market's answer to that. And I think that with the new rollout of their new systems their new MI400 platform, their new Helios rack scale system. This all comes out in 26, and this is AMD's real answer to Nvidia's NVL platform that leads the market today. And so this will be the first opportunity we really get to see AMD compete head to head with Nvidia, but the market's already answering that with customers already starting to line up.
One question, Cody, I have is about, and listen, it's a question for AMD, but also NVIDIA and others, is this company's China AI business, what that looks like ahead. Cody, is there even going to be a business?
Well, Josh, the China business was excluded from this quarter and from its guidance, as Nvidia is doing as well. So prudently, given the uncertainties with the China market, that's being taken off the table for now. I think it's superfluous at this point. I think it's incremental. If it comes, it's not needed, if not necessary. If Trump and China cannot come to terms, then but it is upside if it does happen. I think in the end we'll get some sales of AI accelerators into China. The demand is just too large, and our leadership is too large, so that the demand for these service providers in China is going to be there with their AI aspirations. But in what form and what timing that's going to be, it's still on the table, and so we'll just have to see how that shakes out.
I wonder, Cody, and feel free to correct me if maybe this is too simple, but I wonder if some investors think, you know what, I just heard from big tech. They all just reported results. And there's no sign here that they're slowing their AI investment. Not Meta, not Microsoft or Amazon or Alphabet. If that's true, Cody, then do I just stick with Nvidia? Do I just stick with AMD? Or will you say, no, that's too simplistic?
I think it's too simplistic to stick just with Nvidia because there are a lot of other alternatives, and AMD being the largest among them. And so I do think that there are reasons to be involved here with AMD. I think they're like I said, the primary alternative, and they are going to get the benefit of that incremental growth as it's new upside business. Now they've lived and they've benefited from their leadership against Intel, years of taking share, years of work that they've done to gain that leadership. But now the incremental upside is going to be gains against Nvidia, and I think that's yet to come.
Finally, Cody, you look at AMD and you just look at this chart. There are questions naturally going to be about valuation. You still believe valuation attractive here for Lisa Su's company?
I do. I think the more that they can demonstrate they're a good alternative to Nvidia in AI, and as long as we have the AI tailwinds, as long as CapEx budgets continue to grow, as long as spending and usage is continuing to find attractive homes, then I think that demand for AMD solutions is going to be there. It drives not only a solid growth in their AI accelerator business, but also their core central processing business for data centers. You need these to run the back office applications, to run the head office and the orchestration of all of this data center management that has to happen. And so you can't just build out an AI data center. It has to run on these CPUs and increasingly their AMD CPUs.
Cody, appreciate that instant analysis, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, Josh.